Welcome to Protecting Our Freedoms podcast. I am your host, Joy Vacherbeck, here with my co-host, Mark Renahan.
How you doing today, Joy?
I'm good. How are you, Mark?
I'm fantastic.
And today is the final in our four-part series titled Perspectives on Afghanistan, Past, Present, and Future. Today's guest is the Director of Middle East Studies at the Marine Corps University. He is also a U.S. Marine veteran himself. And before Mark introduces him, please support our programs by going on YouTube and Rumble, subscribing and commenting, and also all of our other social media outlets.
Okay, well, like Joy has stated, today is part 4 in our Afghan series, and today we have an incredible special guest. As Joy stated, he is the Director of Middle East Studies for the Marine Corps University. He is the co-author of Taliban in the Crisis of Afghanistan, as well as many other books and papers. And he is from a quite prestigious Afghan family, I have looked up. He is also here today on his own. He is actually on vacation, coming to us today. He's nice enough to do that. He is here just for a friendly coffee talk on Afghanistan. So without any further ado, Dr. Amin Tarzi. Doctor, how are you, sir?
I am well. Thank you, and thank you to both of you for the invitation.
No, thank you for coming on. We're quite honored. Now, Doctor, whenever we start our show, we like to begin with just asking our guests to give us a quick bio of themselves and and how they came to be where they are today.
Okay. Well, again, salutations to all your listeners. My name is Amin Tarzi, and where I am right now, it's a long journey. I will not bore them with all of them, but I was a Marine long time ago, in a different century, literally, having a new center put together for studying the Middle East, to broadly study it from an educational perspective. So this is part of what we call, in the military lingo, a PME, or professional military education, for the Marines and others who are in there. And a long colleague from the Marine Corps who said, they're looking for you. I jokingly said, they can't look for me. I'm too old and too fat to do that job anymore. They said, no, there's a job, you should apply. So I applied, and here I am. I have been the inaugural director of the Marine Corps Middle East Studies at the Marine Corps University. And my background, the name actually comes from Afghanistan. As Mark, you said, my family is originally from Afghanistan. I was not born there. I was born in Czechoslovakia, modern-day Czechia, Czech Republic, and in the city of Prague. So I'm I'm a mutt. I mean, a mutt in all senses of the way. That's the short end of it. I have a PhD in Middle East Studies, so it's kind of, I'm tickled because every time I go to my office, it says Middle East Studies, and here I am with Marines, which is my tribe. People tell me which Afghan tribe you're from. I said I'm from that tribe called the Marine Corps. And then I'm director of Middle East Studies, what I actually study. So it's a job that I do not only because I actually do it with honor, but also it's humbling to be at a position where I interface with those people who put so much more online than most of us do. So that's what we do. We study the Middle East as a whole. My area of coverage starts on India and goes kind of all the way to Morocco. So that nice little area there that we call the Greater Middle East or
well, thank you for your service, first of all. And my husband would get a kick out of you saying that was your tribe because he's a Marine himself. Did 2 tours in Iraq.
Yeah, well, it's something. It's a thing that even though my times are so long ago, it's an understanding that we have, and maybe in classrooms even also. I'm not saying you have to be a Marine to be able to teach. And we are a smart bunch, but you just know the lingo, you know the understanding of what it means. I mean, why is education important? Because it prepares us. At the end of the day, we serve warfighters. That's the end game. So education is not a secondary issue. It's an active participation in making sure that we understand. And I say that word epistemologically. We understand. We stand under the subjects that we deal with, and always it's not just active kinetic warfare as we have seen in Afghanistan elsewhere. It is that, and then it's a lot more. and the smarter we are, I think we are not the largest military, but it is our smarts and our thinking ability, our creative and critical thinking ability that makes us, in my view, the best.
Doctor,
and future that allows us to be on top.
You stated that you weren't born in Afghanistan. When did you first visit there, and how many times have you been?
Oh, well, no, I lived there. I was born in Czechoslovakia, but I was very young that I brought into Afghanistan. So I was saying, I was like in 1 or something. And I stayed there on and off until the Soviets invaded. So I was born in mid-60s. So until 1979, I left Afghanistan in March of 1980. The Soviet Union invaded on Christmas Eve, 1979. And my family was not very liked by the communists. So they basically, we all left without any identity. When I entered the United States, and I'm still on my certificate of naturalization, it says country of origin, it says stateless. So I did not have a country because the communists literally actually took our identity and said you don't belong to anywhere. So I was always say about this country, about America, I said, look, yes, I wasn't born here, but this is it. I didn't have anything. I didn't come from a country X and became an American. I came from no country, and this is it. And that's the only reason I joined the Marine Corps, honestly. I didn't do it for a GI Bill or any of those things. I did it because I thought I wasn't born in this country, but I had to do something more than just paying taxes and speaking English to be part of this land that I have, that has accepted me. Nobody asked me to change my name. And so I lived in Afghanistan from, I would say, age of 1 or 2 until 14, 15, on and off, because we came to the U.S. at one point. I lived in Pakistan for a while, but that was my place of living. So up to about 15. And then I didn't go there for a long time because it would have been a Hotel California moment, checking in and not checking out. But then I went there back in 96. I went to the northern part under a whole different program during the Taliban, but Taliban had not taken over the north. And then after 2001, I've been there back and forth for work quite a few times. Last time was 2019 that I was there.
Okay, well, geez, that's very impressive. So
very impressive.
We want to kind of get into it. So one of the reasons why we started this series, Doctor, is of course everyone saw Afghanistan in the news with the evacuation and the pullout and all that. I know, as you are an expert on the issue, when we were looking for guests and Joy was actually reading your book, which we have here, The Taliban and the Crisis of Afghanistan, and we thought this is the person we really need to speak to. So I guess Joy would start off with a couple of questions she had for you.
Yes. First of all, I understand from one of your articles that you were one of the originators of the 6+2 scheme for Afghanistan. Could you explain exactly what the 6+2 scheme for Afghanistan is to our listeners?
Oh, yes, I can do that because we actually created it a long time ago. This whole scheme was kind of the end game of the first troubles in Afghanistan. Well, not the first, but one of the ones before 9/11. What happened is briefly, the Soviet Union invaded, as I just said, Afghanistan in December of 1979, and the Soviets were there for almost 10 years until 1989. And they were defeated there. They left, and the Soviet Union eventually collapsed. So between 1989, the communist government of then Afghan President Najibullah stayed in power miraculously without the Soviets until 1992. So this is where things get a little ugly. In 92, what we called here in the United States the Freedom Fighters, or the Mujahideen, which we had supported throughout the 80s against the Soviets, they came in and entered Kabul in 1992, and unfortunately they could not govern. Mayhem broke loose, and there was just atrocities, killings, and infighting in Afghanistan. A very bloody and pervasive civil war. During this civil war, one of the new phenomena that rose in 1994, I don't want to make that, just too historical, but in 94 was the emergence of what we know today as the Taliban. The Taliban came out through the ranks of the Mujahideen with direct support of the Pakistani government and some other support from other regional countries, but mainly from Pakistan. The word Talib literally means a student. It comes from the Arabic term to seek. These are seekers of knowledge, students of the madrasas or Islamic religious schools. And they came from the ranks of the Taliban. So during this time, you have the Taliban kind of taking over slowly from the south. You have fighting going on in the north. The international community was trying to find a way to stabilize Afghanistan. The fears now at the time was what we eventually saw 9/11 happen, that all these people who had been fighting against communists, now the Soviet Union has fallen, they have learned how to fight. They were supported by the West, the United States included, but now they went back to their countries, mainly in the Arab countries. Terrorism is on the rise at this time, and what to do with Afghanistan. So at the United Nations, there was this idea to create a situation to make sure that Afghanistan is not directly, the Afghan war is not directly managed by just the neighbors, Pakistan, Iran, and enlarge the involvement of the international. So if I come back, the 6+2 was to allow an enlargement of the participants who try to make peace in Afghanistan beyond Pakistan and Iran, which because they were directly involved and they had their own interests, and actually they were prolonging the war, not shortening it. So the scheme was created in the UN. At the time I was working in the UN, United Nations in New York, was an idea to create a situation. Initially they wanted to have a regional, but Pakistan was adamant for India not to be involved. So to take India out of the game and make sure Pakistanis join in, we came up with a solution to have the neighbors of Afghanistan, the direct neighbors, meaning those countries that have a direct geographical, not proximity, but actual border with Afghanistan, which are 6 countries. The 3 Central Asian states, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, China, Pakistan, and Iran. So this is your 6. And then the 2, we decided that how to make sure that these countries, because some of those were not as interested. Again, it would give Pakistan and Iran and maybe China a leverage. We brought in a +2. The 2 was the Russian Federation at that point, and the United States. And this group started working on Afghanistan to create a peaceful solution. Of course, the results of that was that the Taliban took over Kabul, and the peaceful transfer of power never happened. But that's the scheme of 6+2. Long answer to a short question, but I couldn't just say it. So sorry, I had to go and beat around the bush so much.
No, interesting, because I don't think too many people have heard that 6+2 scheme. I have not. So thank you for sharing that.
This was not very much in the public, although 6+2 was, but how it happened was not discussed at large. And still, it was done within confines of certain countries within the UN. This scheme of 6+2 was heard, and it was public. And it was actually kind of used again after 9/11. And then recently I keep on hearing people talk about it, and I kind of smirk when I hear it, because I don't know if people actually understand why it started and where it came from. But it's a good way to go back to enlarge it. But yeah, that's what it is.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I have another question. Interesting that you're a Marine and then you were a director of Middle East Studies. So coming from both perspectives, what are your thoughts on nation building versus just going in, getting the mission done, and getting out?
Okay, that's again, you're asking very deep questions.
I'm
I will
sorry.
try to be. They're very valid questions. Look, don't get me wrong. It's just that I can't answer yes or no. It depends. Look, this is a slippery slope when you go and look at that. If you look at Afghanistan, let's look at the two cases. We have done in our history, the United States in the past have done both. Mm-hmm. Look at some of the greatest military political achievements of our country, internationally, I'm saying, I will say the greatest is World War II. You just can't put a value that the fact that we are right now the world leader, the fact that the world, the systems of the world right now are being challenged by China and Russia. Russia is challenging them by disruption, but China is actually challenging them with a very, very clear strategy. Mm-hmm. The system was created at World War II. The World Bank, the IMF, the United Nations. These are all American ideas to create a system, an order in the world. Not necessarily that we are the only power, but that there's a balance, that there's freedom of navigation, that there's at some degree of human rights, so we don't have what happened in the Nazi Germany. And all of that aspects were created post-World War II. And look at what we did. The United States of America turned two arch enemies, and I'm here talking about Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan, not only to two allies, but to two pillars of stability in this system. This is only the United States at that time could have done that. This is absolutely incredible. So we nation build it, if you want. I don't like that term in that sense, but we did. We went into Germany, and we look at today. Look at the Federal Republic of Germany. I'm not saying we built it. The Germans worked their hindies off. However, the opportunity was given there. We worked with them. Japan, the same thing. In Japan, we went in there. We even worked on their constitution. Article 9 of the Japanese constitution still there, which means Japan cannot be militarized. Although right now people are thinking again about it, but I'm not going to go there. A country that we attacked our country. We just had an anniversary of it a few days ago in early December in Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. Atomic weapons were used, yet today it is one of our most important allies. Yes. It was nation building. It wasn't just the conquest and all these marine landings, which we are all Marines are so proud of. We have the blood stripe in our uniform because of those landings. So that happened. The kinetic happened. But the minute Japan surrendered on board USS Missouri, we actually went in there and nation building. So that happened. But there is a question. If you want a nation built, you have to have a partner on the other side. What we did not do right, in my view, in cases, let's jump now to the two modern cases, mm-hmm. Afghanistan and Iraq. In Afghanistan, we went in there, and our mission in Afghanistan was not to go. Afghanistan did not attack us. Let's not forget that. And none of the 9/11 people who were in the plane, the terrorists, were Afghan. They were all from the Arab countries. Mm-hmm. However, it came in from Afghanistan, so it was a legitimate target. No president, no matter who was the president of the United States at the time. It just happened to be President George W. Bush. We had to react. There was no question about that. The question is what happened afterwards. And President Bush very early on said, look, we are not in the, I'm paraphrasing him, we are not in the business of nation building. We're going to go and smoke out Osama bin Laden and kill him. But that policy suddenly shifts without a strategy. And I have to say this personally on a personal capacity. Suddenly, democratization, nation building, all of that becomes the main U.S. foreign policy. In my view, going to your answer, the same thing in Iraq. We actually destroyed a system that worked. Saddam Hussein wasn't nice, but he had a system. Decapitated it without filling anything to it. So look what happened. So if you want to do nation building, you have to have first and foremost a willing partner on the other side. A willing partner. And it has to be a joint project. You can't nation build by throwing money at a place that creates corruption. We saw it in both places. So the answer to your question is a very important question that you're asking. It is crucial in my view as we move forward, because everybody thinks about this major power competition. Major power competition will be proxies. It will be small little conflicts. And how we go about them. Some of them require just the kinetic defense or achievement of objective. And that's it. Some of them require, and this is where the education comes in, partnership, real partnerships, not just calling it, Shana Bashana, which was the symbol of the NATO troops in Afghanistan, shoulder to shoulder. It has to be shoulder to shoulder. Because as we saw, it wasn't shoulder to shoulder because within a day, everything collapsed. And in Iraq, of course, Iranians are now have a upper hand in most of it. So how we can do that, if we want to do nation building, first and foremost, again, I say this in a very personal capacity, foreign policy has to have a long-term objective and cannot change every election. You do that, you can't nation build. Secondly, it has to be an objective that is shared with the people that we work with, not just by a leader, because the leader can escape, like Mr. Ghani or Ashraf Ghani, but within at least a group within that people, at least within a strata of the society. In that case, you have a Japan or Germany. The capacity was there, and we helped. Mm-hmm. Or else you have Iraq or Afghanistan. So both ends of it, we were involved. It's just how it was done. Again, I may have created more questions, but that's my view on that one.
Well, we like it when you create more questions. Yes. It helps us quite a bit. Joy's actually got a whole bunch, so she's got another one coming up. Go ahead, Joy.
Well, actually, building on what you were just saying, because I read the article you had, I think was in The Diplomat, and you were talking about strategically, and we're beyond that point now, but we should have stayed in Afghanistan, or at least had some select few in Afghanistan for intelligence, and also to be have made the 2 bases you mentioned, to keep bases there, so we have a presence in Asia.
Yes.
If you could expand a little more on that for our listeners.
First of all, that piece you're talking about, I am not the only person. So there's Major General Julian Dale Alfred, and he's there, but I'm not speaking for him. He is in uniform, and I whatever we read, and I'll tell you my perspective within that article.
Okay.
We wrote that on September the 11th, 2020. The date was selected for a specific reason, obviously. Look, in my perspective, so I'm talking about my side of it, and I can't speak for my co-author on that one.
Understand.
Look, the idea is, and unfortunately, it's I hate to say it, I told you so, but it happened, is going back to your first question, I piggyback on that. If our situation in Afghanistan was just killing Osama bin Laden, that happened almost 10 years ago. So we should have left. Mm-hmm. That's it. We did the objective. No, it was not. Almost a week after 9/11, a week after we got in officially to Afghanistan, which is October the 7th, 2001, the narrative was that the United States is there to create a democracy and a partnership and so on and so forth. So if that becomes a strategy of President Bush, Obama listens it but still keeps it, and then it comes in by President Trump, and they say, okay, now we're going to leave and negotiate a departure. But who is on the other side? We suddenly decide that these Taliban, I'm not saying we should not talk to the adversary or enemy. We have always done it, Vietnam, everything. That's how wars end, usually, especially in insurgency. However, the guarantee they gave us had absolutely no, it's like, it had no value. And as we saw that, that's one. 2 is, we never really argued on this issue of, okay, how can we do this, that we leave, but we have a transactional, this is a key point here, a transactional agreement with you guys. And this is a transactional agreement. We are not in your country. We are leasing 2 bases. 2 or 1, well, my argument would have been for 2 specific bases. You not see our faces. These bases are not for training your military. These bases are not for, we won't even come into your people. We will actually have a barbed wire around it. You don't come to us. We come by air. We go out by air. That's it. All we do is we pay you a certain amount of money. You say that you're going to make sure you curtail terrorism in your land. We say, hallelujah. You do that, and we pay you that certain amount of money, which is the least we're paying you. This is the transactional aspect of it. we are there, we do our own job, we just listen, and we will keep an eye. If we see terrorists that you don't see, we will inform you, country to country, officially. And if you take action, fantastic. We may even get a bonus for you. If you don't, if you need our help, we will support you that. But if we see that you're actually supporting them, then of course things will change. But that's the issue, because also if we don't do that, with whatever happened in Afghanistan, good or bad, the policy, the investment, both in, number one for me is of course American lives. We forget about that. Sometimes, there's a lot of Americans who lost their lives. We talk about the 2,000, 3,000 dead, but the effects of the Afghan war are going to be here for a long time with families. Beyond that, the Afghans, the treasure, and the political capital. You know that our trustworthiness has already gone down. If it was, we all work on our credit score, 800 or whatever. Well, our credit score has gone down right now. Friend and foe. The foe, of course, is rejoicing. The friend is saying, can we trust these people? Because every other 2 years they change their mind abruptly. So all of those were factors, but the factor that is the most important is look at what's happening between China and Iran right now. They have this strategic partnership for 25 years. And if that goes according to plan, China will have a direct access from the Gulf with all the oil and gas. They will need oil and gas for the foreseeable future. And ports right outside of the choke point of the Hormuz, straight into their landline, curtailing our maritime mitigation processes. All we think about is, okay, if the Chinese and us go into some kind of a problem, we have the choke points in Southeast Asia. The maritime, of course, our Navy is thank God, is much more powerful and will stay like that for a while at least. So that's where we bank on. But what if they just go on land? So we basically have given them a straight line and no American base or any American places we can do something. This over-the-horizon thing, I'm not going to talk about it, but hey, it has its issues. Major issues, I should say. So by leaving all of that, without even a degree of trying to do it, enticing the Taliban, look, we recognize you. And that would have, in my view, again, hindsight is 20/20. But what I'm saying is, first of all, it would have prevented the mayhem we saw, which is still going on. Number two, it would have allowed us, now we're going to free the Afghans, because everybody wants to free the Afghans, because there's going to be a mass starvation. It is on us partially. So now we have to deal with the Taliban. We're going to legitimize them with nothing on our pockets. And if we don't, there's going to be a mass starvation and mass refugee crisis. So this way we would have paid humanitarian aid. A lot of this money would have been given in lieu of that base, and yet would have had eyes in the sky, looking at China, looking at Russia. We gave up some of the longest highways right next to China. We keep on talking China. We decide that, okay, China's only going to play games in Southeast Asia and South China Sea. Well, it's not going to work like that, because they're not working the way we want them to work. They're working the way they want to work. And they say, okay, you want to play here? Okay, fair enough. We're gonna go just straight west and invest there. $700 billion Chinese investment in the Middle East in the past few years. $700 billion. So that was the argument. And as we said at the end of it, nobody said that would be easy. But negotiations are never easy. We just basically gave up. I shouldn't say this, but that's exactly what happened.
Well, Doctor, it's interesting that you brought up, we've had other guests on the show, and one of them was talking about how he feared there's going to be a humanitarian crisis, and he was a former veteran, and as much as he, I don't know what the proper phrase is, as much as he was kind of doesn't ever want to work with the Taliban or with that, legitimizing them, he thinks may be necessary or recognizing them in order to divert a humanitarian crisis. How do you feel? I know, of course, you're a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine, and I know that in the evacuation we lost some Marines. How do you personally, or just how do you feel in general, I don't want to say personally too much, about legitimizing the Taliban? Do you think that they could ever become a government that could be taken, for lack of a better term, seriously? Or which I guess is your opinion. I know in your book you mentioned about the possibility of a moderate Taliban, and what's your take on that?
Okay, thank you. Yes, we lost Marines in the evacuation, but before that, but again, we decided to talk to the Taliban. So those are always there. We lost people to the Germans and Japanese, and then we sat with them, and you have to get over that point. That point, I think, is understandable. It's not about us loving them; it's about working with them and trying to hopefully create a situation which makes our security better, so we have no more losses or need for deployments. And I do agree with that we have to do something on the humanitarian end. However, where I am still drawing a line is it's still possible to do that without full recognition of the Taliban. And there are mechanisms, for example, there are ways to pay into funds that are handled by the IMF, International Monetary Fund, or funds that are handled by the UN, humanitarian agencies. So what you do is you give the fund specifically to a World Health Organization or the Food and Agriculture, aspects of the UN that work on the ground, or NGOs that we trust, or a consortium of countries, because some of the countries, some of our allies are opening embassies, working through them. And yes, the Taliban will be notified that this fund is coming for this purpose. It is for a humanitarian purpose. Will there be some siphoning off? I'm sure it will be. But also to tell the Taliban that, we understand that, but these are the things we want from you. So far, things that are important is the number one is that they do not allow terrorists with international reach. And this is key. Terrorists with international reach to germinate in the country. They haven't done that so far. They have a problem with the ISIS, the ISKP, the Islamic State of Khorasan province, that they're actually fighting them. So it's not that they're helping them. So so far their record on that is okay. Where the record is pretty bad is that some of the folks that are right now in the Taliban government are people that we have money on their heads, especially within the Haqqani network. Can we ask them to remove those people? It's not just if we ask them or not. I think the moderate Taliban, as we say, they exist, but they are right now being challenged by the more hardliners. And right now, we don't have much say there to empower one against the other. So the humanitarian aid we give them does not empower one against the other. You know what I'm saying? So yes, humanitarian has to go, in my view. It's an imperative for many reasons. First, because it is the right thing to do. Secondly, it's going to be a crisis on many fronts. But it doesn't mean that we should immediately recognize them. Recognition should be attached to some actual action on the Taliban basis. For example, and I'm just agreeing my views right off the cuff, that the Taliban have a more inclusive government. If they can come up with that government, and that government lasts for more than a day or two, that is something that could be worked out. So there's a value added to that, because the negotiations that went on the past few years, we gave the Taliban a lot of freebies for no reason. And whatever we give them now, other than humanitarian aid that goes short of recognition, has to be attached to some action on their part that is more in line with our policies.
Interesting.
It is interesting, and I think
well, Doctor, we're kind of coming to the end of our show, but we have a little less time left over. I think Joy had one question that I was going to ask, but I noticed it's on her notes, so I'm going to let her ask it. So it's a great question, but go ahead.
Well, I think he pretty much summed it up with the part in your book I had read about, is there a moderate Taliban and how would they react? And now that they have taken over rapidly, how do you see them interact, let's say specifically with Afghan women, because our first guest on, she actually worked with a lot of the Afghan women over there.
The police.
Yeah. Look, one of the greatest achievements of the Afghan war, it was not the reason we went there by any means, was the empowerment of the Afghan woman. Afghan women has, as always, unfortunately, the governments in Afghanistan, specifically the Islamist governments, have always curtailed the women's rights as part of showing how much they are more radical. Afghan women took leaps and bounds and showed to the world and to the Afghan society that they are not only just a symbolic group within there, that they actually are an engine. And going back on that is very sad. It is heartbreaking. Are there Taliban within Taliban there who are more open to having women? Yes, there are. Right now, as I said, there's a major struggle. You don't hear much about it within the Taliban hierarchy, and I would say Pakistan is the only country that could work on that. That is looking at allowing some women more, perhaps coming back to jobs. Yes, wearing the head coverings and all that, but become more part of the society. And there are some who want to go back to Taliban 1.0. Mullah Omar was the founder of the Taliban. His son is alive in the party networks. These people actually think the Taliban, since August, have been very, very soft. They are very anti-Shia, for example, anti-woman freedom, and they want to go back. So there's a struggle going on right now. Do we have a chip on that roulette table? I don't think we do. And how can we buy that chip? One is having a clear strategy that puts, I said about, a more inclusive government. That's one other thing I should have said. So I add that, to have inclusion of women, not just inclusive with non-Taliban members or minorities, but also women, according to their rules and traditions. I'm not saying they should look like, a woman in a Western country. No, that's not women's freedom. As long as they have access to workplace, access to healthcare, access to education, those could be put there as part of the recognition, as Mark was saying before, recognition deal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, Doctor, one last question, and this is kind of a broad one. It's going to, but what do you see Afghan in the future? What do you see? What's going to happen there, do you think?
I don't like future questions because in the Middle East, one thing is whatever you say is going to hit you in the face. But look, Afghanistan has survived. This country has been there since 1747 as a little empire, and then it was... I think the most amazing thing about Afghanistan is that it still is intact. And with all these civil wars, all these fightings, they have fought every major power that we have had in the past few years in history. And yet they still have kept their Afghanness, if you would. With all the divisions, still there is something that keeps them together. So that is a miracle. And I think there are people who, as we saw, if given a chance, they can actually do contributions. So I see another few years of mayhem. The key again is what would the neighboring countries, specifically Iran and Pakistan, actually Pakistan and Iran, those two, how they play the game. If they're left alone and the Taliban don't go back to the 1990s Taliban, I think you may see a societal readjustment. What the Taliban did, which we did not, the Taliban knew the Afghan society much better than us. We if somebody spoke English or looked like us, we liked them and say, I look like Afghans are like us. We never really went deep into the society. This comes back to the PME. And the professional military education is not just knowing the culture, it's understanding the societal dimension of strategy, something that we forget. There are 4 dimensions. In the modern last 10 years or 20 years, we don't look at the societal aspect more. I think the Afghan society, understanding it, would readjust itself and will reemerge. If the key is here, if the neighboring countries do not make Afghanistan again like 1990s as their area of proxy warfare. And that's a big if, but if that happens, you're going to have civil war for a long time. If that doesn't happen, I think societally the country will readjust itself. It's not something that we will love or we will feel comfortable, but I think it will readjust itself. And the society has learned what we taught them or helped them learn. We didn't teach them. We allowed them an opportunity to learn in the last 20 years. I think the effects of that is not going to go away very soon. if the opportunity is given, meaning that there's no killings everywhere or all the schools are not closed. So I don't see the glass totally half empty. I just see it right now. I don't know which way the glass will go. It's a bad time for the country, but the last several decades of Afghan history, since 1978, has been pretty bad.
Well, I like your optimism.
I love your optimism.
I love your optimism.
Well, Doctor, listen, we have kept you long enough on your vacation.
Yes.
I want to thank you so much for coming and chatting with us. For those of you who are listening again, we had Dr. Amin Tarzi on. He is the co-author of the book, The Taliban and Crisis of Afghanistan, as well as the Director of Middle East Studies for the Marine Corps University. He was not talking today as on behalf of any government agencies, just chatting with a couple of folks. So, Doctor, we cannot thank you enough. And sometime I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about what it was like being a 14-year-old in Afghanistan when the Soviets invaded.
Anytime. Let me know. And blessings to you and your family. Merry Christmas if you celebrate. If not, have a happy holiday and be well and keep up the good work. Thank you,
Doctor, and the best
Merry
to you.
Christmas
To all
to
you
you
watching, to all you watching, you can follow us on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, all the social media outposts. Also, if you subscribe and become a subscriber to our Podbean for only $5, you get your choice of books from our past guests, like today's guest, Dr. Tarzi, and his incredible book, The Taliban and the Crisis of Afghanistan. So follow us on social media, like, comment, and share with your friends. And thanks a lot. Joy?
Thank you, Mark. Doctor, and to all our listeners, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And join us next year as we continue to bring you the stories on protecting your freedoms.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Have a great day. Merry Christmas, sir.
Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.